Hi, welcome to Psychologic with OmphileS, the channel in which we talk all matters mental health and relationships. Thank you so much for tuning in and for sharing even the previous videos. If you haven't done so, keep sharing. The more people who can be part of this channel and watch the videos and gain more information, the better. So thank you. Today, I want to continue on the topic of mental health. And I just want to recap a little bit on what we shared in the last video, which was on the topic of the mental health continuum. And I'll keep going back to the continuum because all of us find ourselves somewhere along that continuum. And there are factors in our lives that are likely to move us from one point of the continuum to the other. And I want us to look specifically at one of the major factors that would cause one person to move from especially the positive side of the continuum to more towards the side of mental problems or mental health illness. And what is that main thing that I'm talking about? It's called stress. It's very common. We all experience it at some point or another. Actually, our bodies were designed to be able to resist stress, to live with stress, and to cope with stress. So it's no wonder that we will experience stress from time to time. Even small children do experience stress, but that's now a topic for another day. Today, I would like just to focus on stress among the general population. So what do we mean by stress? We often use the word so carelessly or casually. You'll often hear people say that, hey, my boss is stressing me, my family is stressing me, I've got financial stress, whatever that may be that you are feeling stressed with. What actually do we mean? Stress is actually anything that places a demand on your bodily, psychological, and even mental resources in order to cope with that stress. And it's likely to end up or result in a change in either your behavior, your body, your physical body, your psychological or mental processes. It's like there's likely to be some changes or even in your behavior. So let's look at the different types of stresses. Experts tell us there are 4 types of stress. The first one is called eustress, spelled EU stress. And what is that? This is a type of positive stress that happens almost on a daily basis. Most of us actually will go through this type of stress and would voluntarily actually put ourselves even in situations where we experience this type of stress because we need it in order to stretch ourselves and to grow. For example, if you are going to participate or take part in an exam which you have signed up for, because obviously you want to achieve something in life, or it can be even just for something as simple and fun, such as bungee jumping, you are likely to experience some type of stress when you go through this activity, because there are certain bodily reactions and certain hormonal releases in your body that causes changes in your body which are similar to stress, although this time it is more of a positive stress. So we also have what is referred to as acute stress. Acute stress activates an alarm in our body when something sudden happens to us that we were not expecting, and this time it may be of a negative nature. It may be a challenging type of situation which places a demand on our resources to be able to cope with that stress. For example, if you were trying to cross a street and suddenly you see a car approaching where there's danger, your body is able to activate the stress response immediately. And it doesn't have to be even just physical danger that produces that acute stress. It can also be emotional things that happen, such as a sudden loss of somebody that you love can also cause that type of stress, which is acute because it's sudden. It requires the body to bring certain changes in order for you to be able to cope. And acute stress is short term. Immediately after the acute experience has happened, the body should be able to go back or rebounds to its normal way of functioning. What happens if we experience too many acute stresses within a short space of time? This is what we then call periodic acute stress, where we experience another type of stress before our bodies are able to recuperate or go back to normal functioning. This places an additional amount of demand on your bodily coping mechanisms. And then the last type of stress is called chronic stress. This is where now you will live with stress on a daily basis, or those circumstances or experiences that are causing stress or demanding for you to be constantly either worrying or thinking about the situation, and where your body is forever tensed up as a result of the stress and being trying very hard to cope with the circumstances. That's called chronic stress, and obviously, as it says, it then places the highest demand on your body, on your mind, and even on your as I explained earlier on, there are different types where types of reactions that stress evokes in our body, that is physically, emotionally, psychologically, and even behaviorally. And we will look into what are some of those symptoms to look out for under those types of symptoms. Okay. Looking at the physical symptoms that you are likely to experience when you are under tremendous stress, obviously the body experiences tension in any part of your body. It can be around your neck, it can be in your stomach. Particularly also people begin to experience tension headaches. Your heart starts to beat faster. You may experience heart palpitations. You may begin to have chest pains, and if it's chronic, you might begin to actually have those chronic headaches or chronic chest pains. People may also begin to develop certain physical illnesses that they normally wouldn't have had it not been for the stressor that they are forever having to deal with on a daily basis. Illnesses such as your high blood pressure, your ulcers, those are typical types of physical reactions which show that our bodies are forever secreting hormones that in the initial stage of acute stress, they are meant to help us cope. But when these hormones continue or to be excreted on a continuous basis, it's no longer then adaptive for the body to be able to deal with such, as it was meant just to help us cope with certain levels of stress, or at least for a certain period. And some of the emotional reactions might include irritation, anxiety, where suddenly you even begin to have anxiety attacks, and also that your emotions fluctuate. Where you are normally somebody who's well composed, you may begin to show signs of having anger and anger outbursts, being frustrated, and just sadness at times, where your mood is just low and you're not able to do the things that you used to do before, or you do them with difficulty. Mentally or psychologically, you may begin to be having problems with your memory or problems concentrating, not being able to think properly, and being caught up in negative cycles of thinking, having low self-esteem, low self-image, where you used to be a very confident person, carrying yourself very well even in your workplace. You may begin to doubt your competence levels, resulting in low self-esteem. And in some instances, you may also end up with burnout, depending on the type of demands and stressors that have been placed on you. Another category is behavioral changes that can happen when you are facing stress. And this is lack of sleep, poor appetite, those emotional outbursts, poor self-care, where you used to, for example, be going to the gym, looking after yourself, making sure that you look very nice, very attractive. You may just stop caring about your looks, or those things that used to matter to you no longer matter. And sometimes people may also end up in getting involved in destructive behavior, such as taking alcohol or drugs, or even over-medicating, self-medicating on some of the medicines. So those are some of the symptoms to look out for that might start to tell you that the amount of stress that is being placed on you is more than what your body is able to deal with, and therefore the likelihood of that stress, whatever it is that you are facing, causing you to move more from the side of good or healthy mental state, more towards ill health, mental ill health, or having mental problems. So as I was going through them, just assess yourself and understand that yes, as much as stress is normal, some of these symptoms are not normal, and you don't have to live with them. You can do something about the situation to prevent yourself from your mental health from deteriorating. So let's just look at then how the body reacts to stress. And at a very high level, I won't go into technical matters here, but I'm just going to learn a leaf from Dr. Dan Siegel's model of the hand model of the brain, just to explain in brief what our brains do when we are under stress and what actually happens and how we can actually help ourselves to self-regulate. According to the hand model of the brain by Dr. Siegel, the brain consists of 3 parts, and I'm going to try and use my hand to demonstrate, so don't mind my nails, okay? All right, so if we were to look at the brain, my hand, even as it looks like this, as representing the brain, where this part of the brain is the spinal cord then that links the brain to the rest of the body. Right here at the base, we have what he would refer, and other experts would refer to as the brain base, and often referred to as the reptilian brain. And it's called the reptilian brain because it's more involved or concerned about our safety. And when it feels unsafe, it's likely to produce 3 types of responses, many of which many of us are familiar with those 3 F responses. The first response is that of flight. It can either give us a flight response, a fight response, or a freeze response, and all of those 3 are self-explanatory. When you are in a flight mode, you run away from the situation because you are looking for safety, whether it's emotional safety, whether it's physical safety. The body goes through a similar type of process. And if you are in a fight mode, obviously you believe that you have the resources to fight the situation and defend yourself. Or you can be paralyzed, not knowing what to do in the situation. And if I open my hand and we look at the middle part of the brain, which then also would be represented by my thumb, this is what is often called the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. It controls our emotions, and it asks the question, am I loved? So it's looking for connection, and where it finds that the connection is not there, the connections are not there, where we feel threatened in terms of acceptance and connection, it then can get dysregulated. Then the last part of the brain will be represented by this part, my fingers, and this part of the brain is called the cortex, and particularly right at the base of the cortex, which would be represented by my nails, would be the prefrontal cortex. This is often referred to as the executive part of the brain because it is logical, it is rational, and it asks the question, what can I learn from this? Its main objective is problem solving as well. So you can see that when my hand is closed, the prefrontal cortex covers all the three bases of the brain and therefore is in control. In other words, we can use this executive part of the brain to regulate the emotions and even our physiological reactions at the base of the brain. And what happens when stress is too much for us then to be able to cope? This happens and we become dysregulated. So there's no connection between the three parts. But how can we then use this knowledge to help ourselves? As I referred to this part of the brain as the logical part, the rational and problem solving. We can engage this part of our brain to regulate all our responses. Obviously, in certain situations where the stress is sudden and there's real physical danger, the flight and fight response would be the most appropriate. At that time, it even overrides the prefrontal cortex part of the brain. And that's a whole other process that goes there. But I want us to just focus on this connection between our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior. You know, I think all of us are familiar with the term cognitive behavior therapy, and that's where it actually would lend its theoretical basis from, that when we engage this part in taking a step back in a situation, in thinking through the possibilities of how the situation that we are faced with, which is, I'm taking it here that we are dealing with psychological stress and not those type of stresses where there's physical danger, where the base of the brain would have been reacted. But we are dealing with psychological stresses that would require us to be able to apply ourselves and be able to take some steps to address the situation. So there are a few things that we can do in that respect. For example, what we call the ACW, or accept, change, and apply wisdom kind of response, where we sit down, take a step back, and think about the situation that's causing stress in our lives. Is it something that we can change, or it's something that is outside of our control? Because most of the time we allow ourselves to stress over things that we cannot change, and the cycle just keeps growing bigger and bigger because there's nothing we can do about the situation, but we are worried about the situation and we feel helpless, and therefore stress just continues. But what might help in that situation is that if we know that we cannot change the situation, we accept the situation. If it's raining outside and I wanted to do something, but the rain is prohibiting me from doing what I wanted or had planned to do, I can accept the fact that it's raining off. I can then think about an alternative plan of how I can achieve the same objective. And in that way is the thing that talks about change and the courage to actually take steps to address the situation in order to change the situation, and applying wisdom because that wisdom is critical in us identifying what is it that we can change, what is it that we cannot change. That is so similar for those of us who would be familiar with that prayer of serenity, which says, God, give me the serenity to accept things I cannot change. Give me the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So when we take steps to actually engage our executive, actually, we can find solutions for the problems or situations that we find out. And those solutions can be varied. It can be inside of us or it can be outside of us. It may mean reaching out to people outside of us to be able to get that help. Some of the other things that is very common is just practicing self-care, which is very basic. Most of the demands that are placed on us are taking away from us, whether it's work, it's taking something from us, whether it's taking care of your family, whatever it is that life demands on you is taking away from you. Self-care is a way of pouring back into yourself and putting some energy, something that will build up your resilience to all these things that are placing a demand on you. And self-care can take many forms. If you look at the entirety of your life, there's an area of self-care that you can focus on that will bring back into your life. For example, if we just look at the physical side of it, the simplest thing really there that you can do in terms of your physical body is the normal exercise, eat well, and rest. If we do that frequently and regularly as we should be able to give our bodies enough to rejuvenate and to build up that resilience. Spiritually, if you look at your spiritual life and how you use your spiritual life then to rejuvenate and to add back into you whatever your faith is, using that as a source of strength to help you cope and build up your coping mechanism may help. Another thing is just making use of relaxation exercises. There are many different types and different ways that people can relax. You can do your muscle relaxation, your mindfulness exercises, which would entail, for example, just your breathing exercises, and even meditation. That also helps to build back into your body the resilience that it may need in order to resist all the stresses that are placed on you. Another practical thing to do is planning and time management. Often we get ourselves into situations because we haven't planned properly. We haven't really applied our minds to how and when we want to do certain things. And then we find ourselves in situations where we really are pressed. For example, if we hadn't planned in terms of our finances and we end up incurring expenses that we didn't plan for and end up with debt, which then causes stress. We will end up in those situations that are placing a demand on our bodies, our mental health, and if we then can learn to plan better, if we can learn then to also manage our time better, manage our relationships. Another element also is the management of our relationships. There are relationships that will help you in replenishing, where you know that with this person, this friend, you have unconditional acceptance. You can actually talk to the friend as and when you need to without feeling judged or criticized, and making use of such resources that are available to give back is perfect. On the other hand, it may require that in managing our relationships that we draw boundaries with certain people, because our failure to do so drains us more and takes more away from us. So those are just some of the things that we can do to help ourselves in coping and dealing with stress. I think So far we have explained some stress in a way that, and how it can actually cause us to move from one state of health to a state of not so healthy. And in the next video, I will cover then some of the results of when we are not able to handle the stress, what happens. And we will touch on the anxiety disorders. That's when we will begin going now into specifics of the different types of mental health. So for today, I will end our video here. I hope you've taken something from yourself that helps you just to know where you are on the continuum and know what you can do in order for your mental health not to deteriorate further. Definitely, if you find that you are at a place where already you are experiencing some of the symptoms I've talked about, please don't leave it until it's too late. You ought to do something, even if it means talking to somebody. And as usual, at the end of this video, there are helplines that are available. Please do call somebody and talk to someone if you need to. There's also an email where you can reach me if you need assistance or there are questions that you want me to expatiate on. Thank you for watching today. Have a lovely, lovely week further. God bless you. And keep on liking, sharing, and subscribing for those of you who may not have subscribed. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.